Alrighty, welcome to another console thing. And this time, as you can see, we're doing the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, or just the Super Nintendo, whichever you prefer. And alright, so some of you will immediately notice that this Super Nintendo looks a bit different from what you're probably used to, because this is indeed, I don't think it says anywhere here, but this is the European Super Nintendo. And you will, if you know what an American Super Nintendo looks like, it looks quite a bit different. And if you have ever seen a picture of what a Super Famicom, which is the original Japanese version of this console, looks like, you will notice the European Super Nintendo basically looks identical to the Japanese Super Famicom, right down to the cartridges, which look like this. And the difference, of course, is that they will say Super Nintendo and not that the European ones will say Super Nintendo, not Super Famicom. The American Super Nintendo cartridges are a bit blockier, also to go with the form factor. And I think that was also intentional in order to make it sure that you could not put an American cartridge into one of these. Oh, actually, I just noticed it actually does say PAL version here in the cartridge slot. So it is marked out there as well. Now, even though the Japanese console form factor wise is practically identical to the European ones, obviously the games will not work on this because, like it says, it's a PAL version. All right, so here is some size comparison. So here's the Mega Games cartridge that I had in the previous episode, and you will notice that form factor wise, the Mega Drive cartridges are actually pretty similar. Of course, they are slightly smaller than the Super Nintendo cartridges. They go in like this. And besides which, on the front here, there's really nothing super special here. You have the power switch. Oh, maybe my eyes were lying, but I could swear I saw the power light turn on there. But yes, so that's the power button. And a reset button. And then this is the very thing that I actually like about this console versus the Mega Drive, is that it has an eject button, so the cartridges actually kind of jump out. There is a mechanism inside the console that goes in there. So that's an important thing to remember, is to never pull on the cartridges. You really just want to use the eject. Now, I mentioned something in the Mega Drive video about cartridge wobble, and actually you can see as I'm pressing against this cartridge that the cartridge does move very noticeably back and forth, and this is what I call the cartridge wobble. And this in my view is probably the biggest annoyance with the Super Nintendo. Basically it's only really an issue if you have your Super Nintendo out in the open, let's say on a table like this, or if you put it on like a table that that maybe wobbles a little bit. Don't do that. In my experience is that with the Super Nintendo, you want to put it on the sturdiest piece of furniture that you have in your living room, one that is out of the way so you don't accidentally bump into it. Because what this can do, or is known to do, if you accidentally touch the cartridge while the game is on, it will probably cause the game to freeze. So this is really annoying. And I mean, this is why I like the Mega Drive cartridge slot slightly better, because the cartridges fit so snugly. And the Super Nintendo is the only console that I know that it does this top loading business where the cartridges are so loosely attached. I honestly have no idea why that is. It probably has to do with the fact that the slot is slightly too big. But for instance, if you compare it to something like a Nintendo 64, I've never had that problem with the cartridge wobble. Of course, the Nintendo 64 cartridges also weigh quite a bit more. Here is what a Super Nintendo controller looks like. The American version of this controller obviously doesn't have these multicolor buttons. These are only on the European version and then the Super Famicom. This is not the one that I opened up in that video where I opened up the Super Nintendo controller. This is actually the number 2 controller, and I can always tell because the L and R buttons are not actually colored in. And actually, there's a funny error in that video where I opened up the controller. I actually put the L and R buttons on the wrong sides. I didn't notice because they went on there because the letters were upside down. So they use this type of connector. And as far as I know, the North American and the PAL systems controllers are completely identical. There's really nothing much else to say about them, and they have pretty sturdy form factor. Like I said, my only problem is that this Y button on the number one controller it has gotten a bit squishy over the years of using it. The second controller has not been used nearly as much, but it does have a little bit of squishiness on it. Which is a bit unfortunate. Now, this is the power brick, which I actually I showed in the NES video. So, like I said, the power bricks for the SNES and the NES are actually completely identical. Let's look at the back of the console, actually, so we see where it plugs in. Here are the various outlets here, and the power plug goes there. Here is the outlet for the coaxial cable, which goes into the RF switch, which I've also talked about in the NES. So the exact same model of RF switch works with this SNES as does with the NES. And I also mentioned before why it's basically there's no good reason to use it. Just again, this also has the channel switches for channels 3 and 4. I've never understood why they had those, because I've said before that my experience has always been that you can tune any channel on your television set to play this console. But like I said, the RF, there's really no good reason to use the RF switch. And it's very helpful to know that the NES and the SNES power bricks obviously are the same, because if, for instance, you buy one of these consoles online and it doesn't come with the power brick, then you at least have the option or alternative to use the other console's power brick. Now, like I said, the RF switch is an option to hook this up to the television, but there's really no good reason to use it. However, you will notice that there is no standard RCA port on this thing. It has something here called multi-out, and basically this is the type of connector that you can use to basically utilize a regular RCA output. And this is really the easiest and also the best way to connect this to a television set, because obviously this way you will get the cleanest possible video signal. But there's a lot of Super Nintendos out there that did not come standard with this particular cord and furthermore, this is a proprietary cord standard that Nintendo developed for their systems specifically. You can buy these; they are around, and there's probably some old stock that they were sold separately with. But you don't necessarily have to just buy this cord if you want to hook one of these things up to a television set. Because here comes a really cool bit of trivia that you should know. So say you buy one of these consoles, but it doesn't come with the RF switch. But let's say you either own or are getting a Nintendo 64, and if you peek into the back of an N64, you notice it has that exact same multi-out hole. So in other words, that exact same cord fits also a Nintendo 64, and that exact same cord also fits a Nintendo GameCube. So if you wind up with one of these consoles and it doesn't happen to have the multi-out RCA cord with it, then if you have a Nintendo 64 or if you have a GameCube, you can pretty easily just take the cord that comes with those consoles and use it with this one. There are other options for connecting a GameCube, obviously, but this is always very nice. It also makes it easy if you want to switch these consoles. Obviously, the power brick on the N64 and the power brick on the GameCube will not work with this system, but basically this saves you a little bit of extra time when you're digging around behind the television set. And yes, that has been the info dump on the Super Nintendo. See you on the next one.